All right, we are live with Ignite That Light. I am the host, Positively Chris. I'm here with my friend here, Ackerlin J, also known as Jay to those who don't call him by his X name. We're here, episode 5 of Ignite That Light, building authentic relationships and connections. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to be here. Appreciate everyone taking the time to watch this. If you're watching it live, or watching a re-recording of this, if you're listening to this after the fact, appreciate you taking a listen. Find us on your local streaming app, whether it's Spotify or something else, and be sure to subscribe. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. And Jay, I'd like to just start off by having you introduce yourself, kind of what's I guess if you could explain kind of what attracted you to X, the platform itself, which is I think how we met each other, and ultimately kind of where your head's at these days, kind of what you've been thinking about, kind of just a little more about you.
Yeah, again, appreciate it. Opportunities to kind of sit down and talk with like-minded people, and I've gotten to know you a little bit, so um, I'm really just kind of humbled by the opportunity. So, um, I started my journey on X a long time ago. To be honest, it was, I don't know, 2013, I think. Um, but it was um, sort of similar to what's happening now. I was in a space. I was actually at a hackathon, competing, and just the energy in this space. It was a week long. It was amazing. It changed my life and really kind of put me on a different trajectory. But at the end of that hackathon, a person who had definitely earned my respect over the course of the week, kind of came up to me and said, "Hey, you might want to try this app out. I think that based on what you're doing and you know, um, your voice and wanting to be involved in this space, I think I definitely can see. Um, I can see now why 11 years ago it was important for me to do it. Um, and I've gone through the whole, kind of the whole cycle on X, previously Twitter, from using it as like a place to kind of just dump my thoughts to, sometimes I might go on a rant, or sometimes I might try to defend someone who can't defend himself, right? But ultimately, it's definitely led me to some amazing relationships and some amazing opportunities. So, where my head's at now is, you know, it's been a crazy month, let's just say. I think since maybe
Yeah.
about the time I first met you, and it's like I've been waiting for it my whole life, to be honest. You and obviously a whole bunch of the other awesome kindred spirits that we spend time with. They've all had a major impact on me. So, my head these days is kind of in a place where um, I think it's finally time for people who maybe haven't had their voice heard or want to help uplift others, or just kind of find their tribe, so to speak. I think that
Yeah.
this is that moment. So that's kind of where my head's at.
No, I appreciate that, Jay. Yeah, I think I'm super humbled by what you said, and I'm grateful for the connection as well with you. And over the past month, I would say the same thing. Um, and I appreciate you again sharing kind of what's been going on, or at least kind of what led you to using this platform, and to again uh, our connection ultimately, which again super grateful for. As in terms of like our topic here tonight, the authenticity piece. If you think about the title, right, building authentic relationships and connections. To me, that's always been a struggle for me. It's the authenticity, right? It's hard sometimes to really to confirm that something, a connection, truly is authentic. And I looked up the definition of authenticity as, and there, much of what I found, it left me wanting, and maybe you can define it better than what I found online. It's a really basic sentence. It's the quality of being real or true. And again, I get why that's, I mean, short but sweet. But I feel like authenticity, it's so much more than that. So I was hoping you could, as we kind of start this conversation, explain what you think it means, or at least your definition of it, because I think that's going to be powerful if we can at least set the ground rules, or at least kind of our understandings, if we can align on what that really means as we talk about those authentic relationships.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm glad you brought that up. And I hadn't looked up the definition, but I'm really glad to hear that it has the word real in it, because my definition certainly does. I think that, the old saying that real recognizes real is, it is real, and it kind of starts there. Um, Certainly that's not all, because I mean, ultimately everyone's real, right? We all kind of put up a mask, especially if we're in social settings where we're uncomfortable, or maybe we don't feel like we're good enough. Um, but ultimately, we all have the ability to be real. And then I would say that in order to do that, you have to also be willing to be vulnerable. And that doesn't mean, be a victim at all in any circumstance. It really means being willing to take a risk on someone who maybe you see a spark in, right? And you want to, I'm going to give this person some of my time, or I want to listen to this story they're telling, so on and so forth. So I think for me, it kind of starts and ends with the word real.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that's like, I guess, another key component of it, right? It begins and ends with like that the real aspect of it. And again, I appreciate you being willing to be your real self here on this podcast, right? Because I think so many times when we think about those connections, especially online or on social media, there many times it feels transactional and almost like, is this really a person that I'm becoming friends with? Is this a genuine connection? And I think just the fact that your camera's on today, this is fantastic. Again, it's a plus, and again, it proves you are a real person. And I think at its basic level, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. And I think as we continue this conversation, I wanted to kind of just move into, I guess, if we think about how to build those authentic connections. What are some, as you think about again, building an authentic relationship with somebody else, are there some sort of qualities or behaviors? I think you mentioned vulnerability earlier. What are some other kind of ways that you foster meaningful relationships, right? Like what are some ways that you can I think build those relationships?
I've been thinking about this a lot today, in preparation for sitting down and having this conversation. And, I had a lot of stories kind of go through my head. What do I want to share? What maybe would be impactful, or maybe what could someone else take from my experience that they could use in their life? So I've done a lot of amazing things. I've been willing to walk into a lot of rooms that at times, especially in the past, I was probably totally unqualified or just uninformed, right, to even be in there.
Yeah.
But this is something that I'll tell a quick story about. My first opportunity in sales. I spent
Okay.
about 7 years in outside sales, and my first territory was in Northwest Iowa, Southeast South Dakota, and Southwest Minnesota. So,
Wow.
for anybody who's ever been in that area, it's an interesting territory. A lot of rural driving. I was putting about 60,000, 70,000 miles a year on my company car, and I remember there was this account in a town called George, Iowa, and just one water tower, all dirt roads, the name George on it. And there was this manufacturer that was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Amazing company. Started out as a blacksmith shop, and I don't want to go too crazy on this, but they were over 100 years old. And I remember the first time I ever walked in, and the secretary reminded me of my grandma. And so I got completely sidetracked. I didn't actually even remember, what I wanted to say. I just sat here and talked to this lady, and I think she enjoyed it as much as I did. And about 15 minutes later, she said, "What in the world are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I work for this company, and I'd like to speak with somebody about the products I have." And she's like, "You know what? This never happens. I'm going to send you right to the plant manager." And so I got a chance to go in there, and this guy was literally a farmer who happened to be in charge of a big manufacturing facility in the middle of nowhere. They made amazing things. They did like electric boom truck lifts for the electric companies. They made like the scooters that people use in Disneyland and, for handicapped people. They did grain handling equipment. So it was really diverse. They had a whole bunch of different things and they manufactured everything. So, it was pretty overwhelming. And this was like, my first big account that I had like that had given me the time of day. So I went into the office and I sat down and, shook his hand and, he looked me in the eye and I looked back at him and I started looking around his office and the same exact thing happened to me that happened with the secretary. I forgot what I was in there for because there's these pictures of all these cars on the wall and I'm a car guy. I grew up at the drag strip. I love cars. I love to restore stuff. Um, so I started asking him questions and he told me, these are my sons who just graduated from high school. And so this was like our project. We rebuilt these cars and I gave it to them. And so again, this conversation went on for almost an hour. And he says, you remind me of one of my sons. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I appreciate that. And he said, you know what I'm going to do for you here? He says, take this. If anybody asks you where you got it, you found it in the ditch, come back to me in a week and let's do business. And he gave me my competitor. And this is not in this area, it's not like a well-known company, but it is a very well-known company in this area. They have all the business. So when he gave me this, it was a book of all the products that he buys, all the prices currently. And when I went back, to my boss and told him this, he's like, "What the hell did you do? Like, how did you do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. I was just like, he's a really cool guy. I was just gushing about how cool he is. So, I'm sorry if I took too long on that one, but just a little story about kind of how you can just be real.
Yeah.
Just let your guard down, and you never know what might happen. And so, yeah, really quickly to wrap that one up, ended up being a very big customer of mine. They probably purchased $300,000 a year and stuff from me, and really that turned into, to this day, probably still some of my favorite people.
What you're describing, it's powerful, and I think it's a testament to, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but what you're saying is, if you're interested in other people, like genuinely interested in other people, for one, the time's going to fly right by, as you indicated. Two, you I think you build actually something more than just a transactional interaction there, right? It's very much it's something deeper than that, and that's exactly what I was looking for. If you had a story or an example, so it doesn't matter how long or how short it is. I think what you're saying is that I think I posted this maybe as a quote or something the past month or two. I said something along the lines of, if you want people to be interested in you, be interested in other people. Like, show, if you want that, those are the most interesting folks, are the ones who are like the ones that are questioning kind of the status quo, the ones that are kind of like interested by just in terms of just their pure curiosity, right? I think sometimes we might frown on that, or we might think that that person's weird because they're asking a bunch of questions. But I tell you what, people are talking about that person. That person is getting noticed. And I think what you were doing is you were showing genuine interest, which and again, the time flew right by. You almost forgot why you were there. And again, like the boss gives you competitive intelligence. I mean, come on, like when else does that happen? But right. But again, like you showed actual, that genuine interest, that real concern, or at least that real sense of, this is something that actually I care about, and they see that. That's the thing, is like it's observed, it's obvious, and I think it's really cool that story, that you have that story, because that's exactly what we're looking for. It's like, what are some examples? And that's spot on. I think you nailed a bunch of the things that I was already going to talk about, actually. So
well, I've got more, so I'm trying not to I'll try not to get into it, but I really enjoy this subject, and I think that it's served me well in my life, and so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of move on to like the next segment, I would think, we talked about authenticity already, but can you, and this is kind of it kind of ties to what we already talked about, but like, if you had to say, here's a list of the elements that truly define my best relationships, or that truly create those more meaningful relationships in my life, Authenticity is probably somewhere in that, I would imagine. I don't want to speak for EJ, but like how far like up or down, if you were trying to rank it, right? Like where would that be on your list of important qualities in those relationships, if you don't mind? I mean, I know it might be a little
Um,
personal, but want
I,
to see
you
where you.
know, I'll be honest with you. Without that, um, I'm not sure how to sustain, relationships. And, I think a lot about sustainability and everything that I do. And so, the thing is if you, if you are authentic and you're willing to be vulnerable in that, it's amazing how much people can help you. And I wanted to bring this up when you were asking the question. It has absolutely nothing to do with money. Um,
Hmm.
I think that it's more about um, being willing to give space, to give time, and when you have authenticity in the relationship, and you're willing to just let your hair down, like this is me, take it or leave it. This is what I think. You're not going to always agree with me. This is how I feel. That might be too intense sometimes for some people, um, but at the end of the day, if you just, if you can be authentic, you don't have anything to hide. And I think that that's where, some of my favorite people in the world are unapologetically themselves. And I just respect that. We don't agree on a lot of things, but we respect each other in that way. So yeah, to me, it's crucial to actually have like meaningful relationships, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right as well, Jay. I think when you were talking, you reminded me of a book that I read, and it's now almost I think 15 years old. The Gifts of Imperfection. I don't know if you've heard of Brene Brown or you follow any of her material, but she talks a lot about that importance of being vulnerable, that willingness to embrace your imperfection, right? Like not. And I think that's tough, right? I mean, we live in a world where you have to be. I mean, again, like we're taking selfies at the right angle and the right light, and we're doing all these things to make ourselves look better. But the reality is that, um, I mean, I'll just be perfectly honest here. It's difficult for me to have a video podcast to take pictures of myself. I almost never have. I mean, you go through all my media on X, you very rarely find a photo of me just me selfie. It doesn't work that way for me. I can't
Yeah.
do it. It's a maybe it's a hang up of mine. I don't know. It's definitely something that I struggle with, and this just doing this itself is it's a challenge, right? And I think that's because I need to embrace my own imperfections. And so that book really resonates with me. I don't know if you've done any reading of her material, but would love to kind of hear if you know what you think about like that sense of imperfection being okay.
Yeah. No, I wrote it down. I haven't read any of it. But you know, as far as the selfie thing goes, I'm the same way, and it's not necessarily because I don't like the way I look, or I don't want to, put pictures of myself on, social media. To me, it's like I talk about this with my kids. You know, you're not your appearance, right? We're not what we wear. We're not how we look. We're way more than that. And so I think a lot of times, like, in real life, everyone that I meet, uh, you know, for the most part, will respect me, give me the time of day, listen to me when I talk. Um, and that probably has something to do with my appearance. I'm a bearded man that walks around and usually have a big smile on my face. I'm usually trying to talk to people who maybe have no idea why I'm trying to talk to them. And so, um, I think it's about, for me, it's been about trying to use my voice. Of course, you know me from Spaces, right? And we just all have our PFPs up there. So I've tried to let my voice speak for me. I've tried to let my heart speak for me, and um, I really do love to to teach. I love to speak. I like public speaking. I do enjoy all of it, but for whatever reason, social media, I kind of feel like I don't, I don't, I certainly don't have anything to prove from like this is what I look like standpoint, right? So I've kind of just been like let my content speak for itself, and let my my interactions with people, because if you know me, and I'm good with that, right?
No, I think that that's powerful too. I think what you're saying, Jay, is that really it's easy to kind of get, I think, drawn into the idea that um, that the physical appearance means more than it really should or does, right? I think we are much more than that, and I think you said that you shared that with your kids. I think that's it's something that I think I wish more people knew. So,
Well, yeah, it's a slippery slope, because a lot of people, if you get your self-worth, or you find that people want to be your friend because of what you're
mhm,
wearing,
mhm.
um, that's um, there's a dangerous situation there of being like let down in a big way. We all get older, we all go through changes and seasons, and we don't all look the same, right? So yeah.
True. Spot on. Spot on. Yeah, I was thinking about a few examples of that in my life, and I used to think that the like I always go back to like my high school days, right? Because those were so meaningful, and that's where a lot of my formative years were. I feel like those were really important years to me in terms of my growth and my learning. And everyone had like kind of all the cool people had the baggy pants, and they had
Hmm.
the wallets with the chains, and
Yeah.
only the cool kids had that. But
Yeah.
but it very much was appearance driven, and you knew the cool kids by what they wore and what brand names they had. You had to wear like the nice shoes, and it's just like we are so much more than that as adults, especially. Like, we know that now, but I think back then, I I didn't think that that would ever be the case, right? And when you're living in the moment, it feels so different. And
Yeah.
again, I've learned to kind of over the decades since, multiple decades since, learn to embrace the fact that we are much more than our appearances, and
Mhm.
it's easy to get tied up in that, and it ties back to again what I said about like the selfie thing. For me, it's just something that I need to work with on my own, and people have encouraged me to kind of step out of my own comfort zone and say, what, like if you want to do that, do it. Like there's nothing stopping you but you. And I that's why like this social media thing is kind of powerful for me. It's because I take different kind of feedback from people, right? And I kind of create my own explanation or my own kind of understanding of what's going on. And I kind of all these different inputs, and they kind of tie back, and then I do my own little research, and I say, okay, well, that makes sense, or no, that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is all something that I think we're all working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, just yeah, I mean, and I think going back to the idea of vulnerability and authenticity, and another word that comes up whenever people talk about that is empathy. And that's something that I think you and I have talked about this, I think, on Spaces in the past. Being able to, I think, recognize, and then I think fully kind of grasp the emotion within a situation, and empathize with other people. It's such a powerful thing, and it's important, I think, as a skill to be able to empathize with others. And I was curious, kind of, do you think of empathy as kind of relating to that vulnerability piece and authenticity?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought up empathy, because that's right next to real for me. Um, if it's okay, I'll give you another story of how empathy kind of really,
Of course.
you know, are we back? Okay, we're good.
Thought I lost you there. We're good now. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're good. So anyhow, uh, I don't know, 12 years ago, moved to the West Coast, was still in sales. was doing a lot more technical stuff at that point. And the first thing I had to do when I got to the West Coast was to go deal with a $3 million complaint against the company, my company. And it was a big issue. There were government contracts that were late. There was $80,000 a week, being racked up, and it was to the tune of about $3 million when I got there. And I literally was fresh from the Northern Plains, and here I am, just a big smile on my face, like I'm just
Mhm.
here to help. And the first encounter with the plant manager was, he was like, "Look, you're 3 months too late. Like I've been asking for help. This isn't going to work. You guys are going to owe us a lot of money." And and I said, "Listen, I can't express to you how sorry I really am that all this happened to you. I understand that you're dealing with contractual issues. This is affecting your cash flow. This is affecting your payroll. This is affecting your family. And I only wish that I could have got here sooner. I can't necessarily solve everything, but my job is to figure out what the heck happened. And then it is to make you whole, whatever that means. I'm here for it, right?" And so we talked for about an hour. We walked around. He introduced me to the people out in his paint department where they were having some of the issues. Um, and it took me about 3 hours of gathering data. And um, he took me back in his office and he said, "Listen, for the first time in months, I have hope, because what you've done is you haven't told me anything about yourself. You've come in here and you've literally explained to me what all my pain points are, and you were right. And the biggest one was his family. His wife was very stressed out. This was his company. It was a big problem. A long story short, I found out that the issue was definitely in their process. There was some very, very specific things in the instructions that needed to be followed. Now, that said, they should have had tech support, from our company that maybe was a little lacking. So we fixed the issue, settled the complaint for $30,000, and ended up having a wonderful customer. But it was like, this is sort of how I would recommend anybody approach a situation where you're either in trouble with someone, or there's an opportunity to help someone, or an opportunity to better yourself. It's really not about you. Um, it's about you being willing to sit back and say, "Okay, I need something from this person or from this party, but I need to figure out how I can help them first," right? Like, and sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you have to sit back and observe for a long time, especially like if you're in a room full of people that are really smart and there's some really big problems. You don't just jump in and say, "I can fix this," right? That's not the issue. You really sit back and study it and say, and it might be something simple. You might say, "Okay, I can't fix the technical issue, but this coffee's horrible. You know what? And I can see that this is a problem. So, like, let me start here, right? Let me just see if I can add some value here." And it's amazing what happens if you're willing to frame it like that when you to a room or any situation.
Yeah, Jay, what you're describing, it's important to really reflect on that. I definitely had a few moments when you were describing that situation where I was like, man, this, I don't know how he's going to get out of this, but you, but again, it comes down to people. At the end of the day, you 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 recognize that the family was really concerned. It was a family business. You got to the heart of it, and you had, I think, a breakthrough in that sense, right? You got to that layer of understanding, which I think some people, again, we've talked about this earlier on this conversation, that it really is, it's more than just dollars and cents, right? That's like out of the equation, if anything. Like
100%.
you mentioned this however $3 million. That's on paper, yes, that's true. You settled for much less, it sounds like, which is amazing. But it comes down to solving other problems, and it's really is, it comes back to the people, right? And those, that authentic concern for what they were going through, right? I mean, yeah, you had a job to do, but there are many ways to do that job, whether it's outside sales or otherwise.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of different people. Like you said, people can come in and say, "I can solve everything. Watch me do this. I'm your number one consultant. Watch."
Yep.
You can do that, or you can sit back, listen, and kind of develop a game plan that way. But you've again, I think hopefully that resonates with other people, because I was going to actually talk about that next, which was like some actionable tips for people. Like, say, like somebody were to say, Jay, I'm having a hard time building an authentic relationship with somebody, say, whether it's in real life or on X or on social media. Like, how do you recommend I go about building that? Like, if you had to come up with a game plan or a strategy or a kind of like a step-by-step process, what would you make sure that somebody did to really develop and build an authentic relationship?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up X too, because I think I can give you an example of how you could do it on X. Just being just a small account, just a normal person. Um, there's a professional athlete that I've been following for. He's an ex-professional athlete. I'm not going to mention his name. Those who know me, I've talked a lot about him. Um, he he is very outspoken. He's very kind. Um, he's willing to walk into situations that probably could get him in a lot of hot water, but his intentions are always to do the right thing. And I've recognized this a long time ago. So I kind of have admired his fire, because a lot of people in his position just won't. They're quiet. And so I thought, okay, how can I connect with this guy? I kind of feel like I get his vibe. And it started off by, it's okay, what is he into, right? And I genuinely took the time to learn about some of the projects that he's doing, and actually watch some of the podcasts, some of the videos, some of the humility that was coming from him. And I just started, it's like, okay, I get this guy. I get him. I get he's a celebrity. He's got millions of followers, but I get him. And so, you know what? I'm gonna add value to his content. And so, it didn't happen overnight. It definitely took a little while, but the consistency, and that's the key. It's not just about showing up one time, because we all have good days. We all have funny moments. We all have these moods that we can be in and just light up a room. But it's, how are you on your worst day? And so actually that is how I broke through. He was having some of his worst days, and he was kind of venting publicly, and I responded and just said, hey, I've been there. I know what that is. You're doing the right thing. Keep it up. And he started to reply to me, and I don't know him personally, but we get each other 100%, and we do have that. We have banter that goes back and forth. But it's about consistency, and it's about knowing kind of the emotion behind what's going on in the facade, in front of you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I'm kind of jealous, actually, because it's hard to break through the noise sometimes, right? They have a bunch of followers and a bunch of people replying at any given moment, and the fact that you broke through, I think that says a lot. You were listening, you were paying attention, you were consistent, and I think I tell the story all the time, the power of that empathy, right? And recognizing when somebody is having a bad day. I had a friend in a previous life who I used to work with, and she, I told you the story. I think you may have heard this, Jay, but like there was this email request from our boss, basically saying, "Hey, I need somebody to do this one task." I don't know if it was like fill out this form or build out this spreadsheet for us, whatever it was. It was something pretty basic, but normally somebody replies to that reply all. They'll reply in like 5 minutes to that boss. Nobody wanted to do this, so like hours passed. I think the email went out like 9:30 in the morning. We're at like after lunch. It's like 2 o'clock. Nobody replies. It's like now it gets to be about like 2:15, I'll say, and then my coworker sends an email reply. I can do it. Period. Send. And I'm like, okay, like she's been here all day too. She's been here. I've been here. Like something's up here. Like she doesn't normally even write emails like that. So I walk over to her desk. I'm like, hey, Tara, like what's going on? Like what's like? There's some emotion here. What's going. Are you willing to share? She's like, you got all that from 4 words. I'm like, yeah, it's yeah, like you're feeling something. I know it because again, we worked together for a while. I recognized her typical her language, but also, like just taking the context, right? I mean, like it had taken a while, and I don't know. Like I think some people wouldn't have been able to even figure that out. I'm not saying that everyone couldn't, but what I'm saying is that like it's the ability to kind of read between the lines. And I think that's what you were saying too, Jay, is that again, I'm not speaking for you, but you're able to kind of recognize when somebody is having a bad day, or they might just come out and say it. But I think in order to really break through the noise, you need to kind of, again, that consistency is important, but also recognizing what's going on. And I think that's how you did that, which is, again, it's amazing. And I'm jealous. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you were cutting out for just a second, so I was
oh,
kind of waiting for you to come back. But
sorry about that. But yeah,
no, but
it's
you're
yeah,
100%, yeah, you're 100% right, Chris. And that's kind of about that kind of goes back to being consistent, right? Like if you know someone, right? So it's not just you being consistent. You can have a friend who like this is kind of their creature of habit. They do these things, they seem to fall into these kind of troubles, or they have these, kind of things that they like to do. Um, and it's easy to pick up on those inconsistencies when something's off. And that goes back to building authentic relationships and kind of friendships in general. Um, Especially goes for everybody, especially in 2023. But I know that a lot of men relate to this. We don't talk about our problems with other people. A lot of us don't. We feel like, hey, um,
true.
I can handle this. This is what I'm here for. I'm the protector, whatever it may be. Um, but when you have people that you've been consistent with for long enough, they can pick up on the nuances. Like, okay, I haven't heard from him for 3 days. That's abnormal. I just texted him. Now he gave me a one-word answer. Okay, something's up, right? And it doesn't. Again, this goes back to money too. It doesn't cost anything to be a good friend, right? To have authentic relationships, but it does take attention. And the thing you do have to spend is your time. You have to spend your focus. Um, and it could be, it's funny. I think someone last night in their space asked if Josh, the impression guy, could impersonate Randy, the key guy in the hardware store, and how much she loves this guy. And she's like, "Oh no, he's great, right?" Well, like you can have an authentic relationship with Randy, the key guy in the hardware store, just by doing these things. And so I think it's amazing. I think it's awesome how we all kind of impact each other's lives. And I want to have the opportunity here. Thank you personally. You've actually you've seen a lot of me the last month, and so there's been a lot of really good days, and there's been some bad days. There's been a lot of amazing conversations, a lot of eye-opening things, and ultimately I've been on like this journey of self-discovery that has led me here, and so I'm really grateful for that, Chris. And I think that even after we wrap this up, I'll be sending you some messages. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. And again, I did want to also the feeling's mutual, Jay. I've learned a lot from you. I've learned not just about you, but also from you, and you've inspired me over the past month, especially. Even if you may not recognize that, I may not say it to everyone who I talk to. That's on me to get better at that. But you do, again, the fact that we each are spending time in spaces conversing with one another when we could be doing any other 100 or million other things, and we choose to do this actively. I think that's, to me, that's not lost, right? That's not something that I take for granted, and so I'm extremely appreciative of your attention and your time, like you said, because all of this takes time. At the end of the day, for me, when I think about how you build that authentic relationship, you can't do it like you said. It's not one and done. You don't show up at once and you say, all right, now I'm going to be best friends with Jay by the end of this conversation. Doesn't work
No,
that way.
no,
Like, it requires that long-term approach, and again, consistency, again, showing not just interest, but also, trying to find ways to really, again, you mentioned adding value to that person who you're talking about, that former athlete or whatever. That's it's the value part will come, I think, if you're giving time and attention and focus, and you really do care about the relationship. That will come. Like, it's not a I'm not saying that
yeah,
you shouldn't focus on it, but I think that does come naturally. Again, I've laughed so much over the past month thanks to you, again, it's not just all serious. It's also, it can be fun as well, and I do want to highlight that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you made. Uh, Fun, that's the other word. And so like that's definitely the trifecta right there. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And I've told this story in spaces a few times, but I've been blessed with the opportunity to coach youth sports in my life. And, you know, I remember that I took some advice from John Madden. When he coached, he he didn't have rules that didn't affect the outcome of the game. Like he didn't care. He didn't care if you wore mismatched socks, those kinds of things. Like you better play well, right? And so I remember, playing football as a kid, and then when I started coaching, I'm like, okay, what are all the things that really sucked about this, and what are the things that were great about it? The things that were great are the days that you had fun. And so I only had one rule. That was it. And it was to have fun. And the parents absolutely loved it. The grandparents loved it. The kids loved it. Um, the coaches loved it. It was literally the only rule that we had every single day was we're having fun today. And if you can't have fun, we'll come over here, we'll have a talk, whatever it is, let's get it out, but we're here to have fun, right? And so that's the key. And if you can be real, if you can be authentic, and you can have fun, you can really build relationships. I think that can stand like the test of time because you've seen each other at your best and you've seen each other at your worst. And um, yeah, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of fun. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, it's important to me as well. I could, again, like I said, we could be doing anything else if it wasn't at least remotely fun. If we weren't getting some sort of enjoyment, I don't know that we would be using the platform as often. And so again, the spaces, and you just go back to what you just said a minute ago. I think I heard you mention this too. I think it was you who said it. It was if you're in what was that, in that environment, right? You look at these teams playing. Which team is winning? It's the team that's having the most fun, right?
Every
I,
time.
at the end of the day, like if that team, it doesn't matter, like whatever it says on the scoreboard. If that team of kids, and I played Little League for almost 10 years, I want to say, when we were having fun, the score did, and the score matters, right? Your kids, you
Right.
want to win, but if I have a big wad of big league chew in my mouth and I'm chewing that grape thing and I'm chanting and I have my rally cap on and it's inside out and I'm just hooting and hollering. That's fun, and that was something that I'll remember until the day I die. Those are the memories, right? And that's the fun that you're talking about, and I think that's, again, we can also have a degree of that as adults. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I know we're at about 45 minutes into this, and I love the conversation. I do want to bring up one more topic while we're talking about this. I can talk to you about this all day. I want to be respectful of your time, Jay. Um,
I'm
the
just going to get
idea,
in spaces when we're done, Chris. It's okay.
yeah, we'll be talking again in a few minutes. But the one more thing, it's active listening was something that I wanted to kind of touch on with you as well, because it's and I'm not applying this to spaces because that's kind of its own thing, but in like real life interactions, I think that active listening is another important component of how you build that relationship with somebody else. If you're willing to kind of sit there, listen, ask relevant questions, but not try to give advice unless they ask for it. I think that's kind of the
Mhm.
the nugget of wisdom I've learned over my decades of life on this spinning ball. But would love to hear your thoughts on active listening and how that plays into this
So,
as well.
amazing, amazing question. I'm glad you brought that up because it goes back, like, this takes me back to like sales, right? And, sales is like in everything we do. Some people, everyone's in sales, they don't realize it. Um, you know, Active listening is like a good example of that is taking notes, right? So the very first thing they'll teach you in any sales role is that to be respectful of that person's time and all the information that they're giving you, you need to be like seriously taking notes when you're sitting down. Like that's active listening. Um, if you do that long enough, you can kind of put the notepad aside. I mean, I have one sitting next to me and I have been writing on it, so don't get me wrong. But you can train your brain to pick up the things that are important, right? There's keys, and maybe it's like there's emotion that's being shared, and someone maybe has been kind of even keeled all night, but then all of a sudden, they're talking about this thing and they seem a little bit emotional. That's active listening. In the cases of spaces, I think it's hilarious. It's wonderful. So I wasn't able to be in the space yesterday for a long time. I was working late, and then I had to go to the grocery store. It kept cutting in and out, but I was listening to enough that I knew, okay, when I get back, I'm gonna show an example that I've been listening for the last 2 hours. That's what I'm gonna start with. More like, I've been here. I know I haven't been participating, but I'm here and I'm back now, right? And so
Yep.
it's little things like that. Like we can all do it. I mean, we're all busy. We can't always be there all the time, but yeah, active listening is like that's where they teach you to start. Like day
Yep.
one, is with a notepad. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I think that it's like, man, it's if you want like a tool in your toolbox to really say, okay, like what can I do right away
Yep.
to show somebody that I care? You know what? Show up and take notes.
Yeah.
It means a lot. Yeah.
If I were to count the number of Moleskine notebooks I have purchased over the past 5 years, and I started in a sales role as well, or at first it was an internal consulting role, but I'm sort of in sales now. And over the past 5 years, I probably have purchased 100, maybe 150 of the hardcover Moleskine notebooks to take notes of various sizes too. I mean, like they come in all shapes and sizes. I have like the small mini ones that are like, like the size of like half of a cassette tape. Like they're really tiny. And then you have these larger ones. I have one right in front of me actually on the other side of my screen here, that I use as well to take a bunch of notes. And I think that's again what you said about active listening. It's almost like step one, right? If you think about
Yes,
it, like
it
you
is.
want to show that, and again, throwing in like an inside joke after listening to a space for 2 hours, showing that you were paying attention. It's kind of the same thing, and I appreciate you sharing that example, because that's again, that's going to help. I think other people, might be able to learn from that as an example.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I think that's good stuff.
And really quickly, because I know we're
Yeah.
about to wrap up, but I
Yeah.
think that a tip that you just brought up that could really help people. You know, part of being, being able to have authentic relationships is knowing yourself. And a lot of people really don't know themselves very well. And so when you brought up the journal or the notebook, um, my just a little bit of advice, because I'm thinking about if somebody is in a position where they don't have a lot of meaningful relationships in their life and they don't know why, and they're like, okay, where do I start? Um, Writing down how you feel and what you're going through, what you're looking for in a friend, what kind of friend you want to be, or what kind of relationships you want to have. If you start there, because, look, with any endeavor in your life, if you can find a way to start with the end in mind and then kind of reverse engineer it as you go, right, with the right intentions, you can achieve almost anything. So, it's okay. I've got notebooks and notebooks of stuff, and sometimes it comes out in song lyrics, sometimes it comes out in just like strange rants. Sometimes I find out that I'm upset about something from 10 years ago. I had no idea what it was, whatever. But that's a really good tip, and I think that that's actually step one, is start with yourself and then find out what you want. And I think that the road will kind of open up for you from there.
That's fantastic advice, Jay. I think, yeah, knowing thyself first, right? It's what they say. There was this quote that you mentioned when you said, you said start with the end in mind, which I know that's also something that's in a couple of personal development books that I've read. Also, I think there's this quote. It's it's actually from it's like more mathematics. It was invert, always invert. It's always start with another angle, start from the other end and work your way back. It's like from a mathematics approach, it also works. And again, not just in like human interaction, but also in other ways of life. That can be what gives you that breakthrough when you least expect. So start with knowing yourself, begin with the end in mind, know what you want to get out of a relationship, like what you're looking for in a relationship. Probably a better way to say that. And getting and knowing kind of what that is, right? What that looks like. Get it on paper, and really reflect on that. That's powerful stuff. Yeah,
I've really enjoyed this, Chris. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for the
Jay, for
opportunity.
sure, for sure. I do want to thank you, Jay. Everyone follow at AckerlinJ on X. I am Positively Chris here. I do want to wrap by, again, making sure everyone follows the guest. This is not all about me. It's about the guests. I'm a boring person. I'm one of the most boring people you ever meet. But the guests are the stars of the show. So follow Jay. I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate, Jay, your time, obviously. And we will talk again here in probably about 5 minutes.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, Jay.
All right. Bye.